for being here and sorry for the technical details, but this is the masterclass for the science and spirituality of mushrooms. Just a little bit about me before we dive in. I am a plant medicine guide, a budding herbalist, and a holistic health coach. And my mission, really, in everything I do in my nature programs, with kids, with people, with plant medicine, is to reconnect people back to their divinity, back to their innate intelligence, their power, and also the intelligence of nature and the earth. And my framework is very unique and is a bridge between science, evidence-based, clinical, and the more unseen, ancient wisdom, earth-based traditions and rituals. And so I really do feel called here to bridge the gap. Um, and plant medicine has been one of the main modalities that I use to do so. And so what we'll cover tonight is the kind of the science in as far as what the research is showing, how mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms help with neuroplasticity, brain health, nervous system regulation, how it can bring us into a more calm and centered place by modulating the brain. A little bit about the difference between microdosing and more larger ceremonial doses, safety guidelines and best practices. And then, as far as the spiritual side goes, just how mushrooms have been around for billions of years. They're ancient teachers, ancient initiators, how they can drop us into a more grounded and intuitive self where we can connect with our highest self, most authentic self, whatever you want to call it. How we can work with them with reciprocity and reverence, and using ritual, intention, and integration. And if you have any questions at any point, I have my chat open. Just throw them in there and I will try to answer them as best I can. So, perfect. So, like I said, I have a deep, deep, deep passion for going down the rabbit holes of ancient wisdom, esotericism, Gnosticism. I just went to Egypt in October, which ignited kind of that hunger for ancient knowledge. And I really feel called to bring a lot of those teachings, a lot of that spirituality back into our modern day Western society. And when you really look at the ancient traditions, religions, cultures, whatever you want to call it, philosophical, whatever it is, Egyptian, Greek, indigenous, Eastern, you can see a common thread is that they always treat the body, the mind, and the spirit as one. And they always take into consideration the environment, and nature is part of that. So they have a very much holistic view of things. Um, there was a time where science and spirituality were considered one and the same when it came to almost like astronomy, astrology. And with the Enlightenment or the upcoming age of technology or the age of industrialism, right? The age of science where we started to measure and find evidence and whatnot. It really separated us from the spirit, the unseen, the unknown. And I do believe it is our human nature. We want to control, we want to understand, right? We're all born here and we don't really know why. So we want to figure out the meaning of life, but we really have warped it on its head by trying to overanalyze it and really boil it down in a scientific view. And we don't leave room for the liminal or the numinous or the unseen. And that is also associated with the feminine. So it's very much a masculine way that we're operating in. And so without this feminine, without this spirit, without this mystery, we feel a deep, deep void inside of ourselves, a deep disconnect to earth, to each other, to ourselves, to our higher power. And this disconnection often does manifest as illness, as physical illness, as mental illness. I believe in my heart that a lot of our addictive tendencies in our culture, our mental health stems from this seeking for external things outside of ourselves because we don't have that deeper trust and deeper connection within ourselves. And I can say firsthand, I definitely have suffered from addictive tendencies with food, alcohol, other substances to try to fill that void. And I've definitely heard the same from a lot of folks that I work with as well. So, medicinal mushrooms as a bridge. They are such an ancient teacher. There is evidence that they have been used since about 10,000 BCE. And that's huge. That is a huge contributor, and according to the Stone Age theory or the hypothesis, that suggests that it was the mushrooms that helped us expand our conscious mind, our newer brain, right? We have our reptilian brain, we have our emotional brain, and then we have our higher order thinking, our conscious brain. And so the theory that Terence McKenna proposed was that these mushrooms allowed us to expand our creativity and storytelling and all these different aspects that we are now functioning out of. So that's a really, really cool theory that he proposed. Before the Spanish conquered the Americas, they were the original sacrament before wine. So I also think that's an interesting fun fact to throw in to people to have a better understanding because I grew up Catholic and I know that they're often seen as taboo or, there's just a lot of misconception around them. So to view them as sacramental, I think is a very cool way to view them. And of course, when they're approached with reverence, preparation, intention, they do help us expand our consciousness, dissolve our ego and open our heart so that we are connected to ourselves, each other, and the earth. Do you have any questions? Anyone have any questions so far? We got off to a late start with some technical difficulties, so I don't want to speed through it, but I want to honor your time. So, okay. So, when it comes to no, I'm gonna just FYI, you have people in the waiting room. Okay. People in the waiting room. They're not there anymore, but thank you for letting me know. I don't know how to get them back. But thank you. I'll keep my eye out on the waiting room. Okay. So, mycelium is such an interesting concept. I remember one of the first things that kind of got me on the mushroom path was the documentary Fantastic Fungi. And in that documentary, they explain mycelium, which I like to consider it the OG internet. It is the underground network of fungal threads beneath the soil that allow the trees to communicate, share nutrients, and support one another. And me being on this journey to tap back into my feminine nature and my feminine essence, I like to view the mycelium, the mushrooms, as very feminine because they are really, truly the weavers of life, the unseen weavers of life. They're holding that together, the communities, they're nourishing life, they're creating safety through these invisible. And that always resonates very deeply with me because women, we tend to be the space holders behind the scenes quietly, just weaving together community, holding it together. And I just really love that analogy, so I wanted to include it. And the mycelial network, there's, I think, a picture in a couple slides, also resembles the neural networks in our brain. And I love that because that is just another reflection of how the microcosm mirrors the macrocosm, and the old maxim goes as above, so below. So we'll cover that in a second as well. Okay, so the science of medicinal mushrooms. So I do work at the first legal clinic, psychedelic therapy clinic in the US, Bionic Bloom. And so a lot of my background and education is in the clinical side. As I do this work deeper, I am being more called to use it in a more traditional ceremonial way. However, I love to speak to the Western mind. I'm very analytical, very heady by nature. So I do love honoring the how, the why, the science, the research in when I'm educating. And so not to get too in the weeds with the science, but this photo or this picture is one of the most infamous of psilocybin. The left is a control group, a placebo group, and the other is a psilocybin group. And so you can see the connection of the brain when on psilocybin versus placebo. And so one of the coolest things that these mushrooms do is they connect our two brain hemispheres, our right and our left. And we all know that um, the right is our feminine, our more abstract, our left brain is our more logic, our more masculine side. And so the medicine allows the sides to communicate, which is really, really interesting what happens. You start to get this thing called synesthesia. I can never say that word, but that is something where you're starting to taste colors or feel sounds or seeing smells, which is very similar to the neurodivergent brain in real life. So I work very closely with neurodivergent individuals in plant medicine, and it's almost like they already experienced that. So when working with medicine, it just like amplifies their superpowers even more, which I absolutely love. And so, yeah, when it's allowing our brain to make more connections, to make more neural pathways, it has a way of modulating our default mode network, which is kind of our daily neural pathways that we use. We all know that we only use, we operate 95% out of our unconscious brain. And so it has a way of giving us a higher vantage point of, different solutions and different ways to solve a problem. And I always compare it to a road, right? We started to make highways, we started to go on roads, and the more you use that road, the more that it's a well-worn path. And it's much harder to go off trail than to use the trail that's already been plowed and paved and everything. And so it opens the door for new pathways, and that's when integration comes in, right? It doesn't just blast it open and it's open forever. We need to integrate with that new road or path, but it does give us the vantage point to see these new pathways. Yeah. So that is really helpful for me and my personal experience. It was very, very helpful in my compulsive eating, my binge eating, my eating disorder that I had for a very long time. It helped me really have a higher vantage point of what was happening and allowed me to find new possibilities and new solutions to that. One of my other favorite, absolute, I think this is fascinating that it is responsible, it modulates our amygdala, which is our brain's fear and threat center. And I'm thinking just of how much of our culture is stuck in this emotional brain. Like I said, we have our reptilian brain, our survival brain, that's responsible basically, again, just for surviving. We have our emotional brain, our amygdala, our hippocampus, our thalamus, and that is kind of like the next evolution was emoting. And then we have our cortex and our cerebral part of our brain that's planning, executive functioning, and all the different things that have gotten us to where we are with technology, the consciousness that we're at. But it decreases the activity in the amygdala so that we can actually drop into our body and feel more present, and we're not in this constant state of survival mode. And when we can get out of that survival mode, we can actually start to experience things like joy and peace and presence and flow and creativity. And we start to feel like something is moving through us, and we start to get the downloads and the ideas, and we're not just this repetitive loop of survival and fear. And it also acts on our 5-HT2A receptors, which is the same receptor that an SSRI would hit. So it's becoming microdosing is such a great alternative for SSRIs. And not that I ever recommend that for everybody, but if you feel empowered to take that step, because I think like 60% of people don't even know why they're on an SSRI and say that they don't work. A lot of people, I've helped a lot of people transition off of them and into a more natural medicine like microdosing. So yeah, it helps us alleviate anxiety, depression, reduces obsessive thinking. enhances our mindfulness, our mood stability, and lessens reactivities to triggers and curbs addictive behaviors. Okay. And the other really interesting thing that it can help us with is emotional processing and supporting trauma. So, another Western program that I think we operate off of is that we have to oppress our emotions, we have to repress them. Feeling is bad, we have to grit down and get through it, right? We have to just keep going with it. It's weak if we feel. And where that has led me and many others to storing that shit in our body, right? We don't feel it. It gets stored somewhere in our body. And we think maybe we're hacking the system by intellectualizing the feelings rather than feeling them. But that never works. And so we're all holding on to these old stories, these unconscious traumas and childhood stuff. Even before we had language, it's stuck. And so the medicine is an amplifier. It has a tendency to bring these things to the surface, not in a scary way, but in a gentle way of, hey, like maybe you want to look at that. Are you ready for it? And that's the work. That's why not everybody is called to this path, is because it takes work to process that. It takes work to look at our shadow and the shame and the guilt that we're holding on to and work through it and release it. It's not for everybody. That is for sure. However, if you feel called to it, if you feel like there's something blocking you, I highly advocate for medicine in that case to help you kind of just get that again, that higher vantage point of how you can get through it. It's not a quick fix, but I often call it a shortcut because I work in the therapy space and there are people who come in with the same things over and over and over again, and they don't know why it's so unconscious. And the medicine just has a way of getting under the surface into the unconscious and can really create the space in one session where like 10 years of therapy, you'd still be ruminating about it. So yeah, feel it to heal it. Once we feel it, once we heal it, once we release it, we are then creating more space for higher levels of these emotions. As you can see scientifically, emotions have a frequency and hertz. So when we are transmuting these lower frequencies, this guilt, this shame, this grief, this fear, we're creating space and transmuting into higher levels of being, such as joy, peace, love, enlightenment, which then attracts, right? The level of law of attraction. We're vibrating at that frequency. We start to attract people, opportunities, and circumstances that reflect that. Any question? Okay. So I get a question all the time. What's the difference between a microdose and a macrodose? And everybody's different. Everybody metabolizes the medicine different. Somebody could take a very small amount and have this really profound experience. Somebody could take a lot and not really feel it. So it just depends kind of on you. It's like dating the medicine. You have to kind of see how your body responds to it. But by definition, a microdose is about zero point 0.1 to zero point 0.5 grams, very small, subperceptual. You do not get the hallucinogenic effects, very subtle. If anything, what I hear the most is that you feel more grounded, more present. The mask starts to come off. You feel just like you're operating in the world in a more authentic place. And I often use it a lot for creativity when I am wanting to create music or dance or just kind of be in the flow. It's great for that. And a lot of people use it for emotional processing as well, but on a much more subtle level, right? It's not this blast the door open. It's more ritualistic and integrated into everyday life. And then a museum dose is a light perceptual dose. And so it's enough to open awareness, but you're staying grounded in your environment. You could have heightened senses. Um, so that's why they call it a museum dose. You take a little bit and you go to the museum and the art kind of just pops a little bit more, it starts to be more vibrant and yeah, a little bit of visuals, but nothing too crazy, no ego dissolution. You still know who you are, where you're at. And probably a really great dose for a sound journey or a hike or an immersion in nature. I can attest to that. And typically about 2 to 5 and above is a full dose or a macro dose. And that's typically for deeper exploration to experience that expanded consciousness. Um, I I can say that like when I'm using the medicine, it's most always for an inner journey, either shadow work or going in to find where I'm blocking myself or trying to tap into more creativity. But it's always an inward journey. And yeah, I've never really experienced the ego dissolution. I've always felt like that, but it's very much a wavy experience where you can go in and out of it. But typically those last about 3 to 6 hours, 3 to 7 hours. I say like 4 to 5 on average. But this is where we really get access to the subconscious mind, what's under the surface. Again, we as Westerners, as Americans, just as humans, we want to intellectualize everything and try to think our way out of it, willpower it out, discipline our way to success. But that just doesn't work. And so this gives us a new perspective, a new way of looking at it, so that we can kind of address it in a new light and really see what's blocking us. Because again, I think a lot of the times we just don't know. People want to be better or transform, but we just don't know how. And I often advise just, or I always recommend preparation for that guidance and integration, which we'll get into. Kind of went over this already, but this is the photo of the mycelium network compared to the neuronal network of our brain and the cosmic web of life, which really excites me because I just love the interconnectedness of everything. Everything in life truly is a fractal of, everything. We're all a reflection of each other. And so, as I stated, it's a very small amount to enhance cognitive, emotional, and spiritual benefits. It's more about showing up for yourself every single day, a ritual, rather than this big peak experience. And I love both microdosing and larger doses, but I really love microdosing for the fact that it's not a magic pill. I like to call it a multivitamin for the nervous system, but it is a practice. And so when I'm microdosing, I usually am also journaling and meditating and doing immersions in nature and doing a lot of inner work along with that. And obviously that has a huge ripple effect on the rest of our life when we're doing the work. You can't just pop it and go on with your day and expect your whole life to change, but it is a very good supplement for other rituals in your daily life. And so I think I've already spoken about the brain as a network of path or trails. Over time, things get overgrown or blocked. So microdosing, I always like to call it like a gardener. It goes in and it kind of picks out the weeds and what's not serving us anymore and clears new pathways and clears the old pathways so that we can get back to our higher self. Okay. And yeah, it's hard to predict where the future is going to go with everything, right? We've got big pharma, but we also, I feel like are experiencing a big collective awakening and psychedelic renaissance is upon us. It feels like the 60s and the 70s are resurging. But I feel like it's going to be hard to combat the research when it comes to depression and how they are a good alternative for SSRIs and how, somebody may be suffering from this lack of spiritual connection or whatever it might be. And the medicine often just kind of, again, blasts the door open and gets to something under the surface that they're not able to get in every day of their life. Very good for anxiety, again, hitting the amygdala, bringing us more into our body, more into our center, more into a calm state. I think it's what fascinates me is when we look at addiction or something like alcoholism, right? So many of us are either suffering in silence with that kind of stuff, or we know a loved one who is suffering, or alcohol is glorified in our society. So if we're able to have a tool that can help us create new neural pathways or lessen that compulsion that we are constantly getting when it comes to addiction and, substances. I think it's very, 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 very promising. And I've seen it again in the clinical work that I've done. All right. Any questions about the science before we get into the spirit? I'm gonna keep going and I'll keep an eye out. Cool. Thank you. Okay. So this is, I think, where I really light up. Um, because plants, the more that I work with plants, all plants, plant medicines, herbs, whatever it is, the more that I just feel called to this path and the more that I feel called to share it. And when you think about it, plants have always been our silent partners. They give us oxygen, they give us food, they give us shelter, they give us clothing, they literally give us life. And some of us don't want to acknowledge that plants are sentient or have their own intelligence or consciousness, right? We always, I feel like, as humans, operate out of this idea that we're greater than. We're, here to rule over the earth and rule over the animals and rule over the plants. But we have to acknowledge that our existence depends on them. And when we start to restore that conscious relationship to the plant and the fungi kingdom, something shifts and we begin to become really in tune with their intelligence, which in turn changes how we are in relation to the earth and each other. And I've kind of mentioned this already. We're not only are we physically sick, right? Not only are we obese, cancer, heart disease, you name it, there is a deeper soul disconnection, right? We're doom scrolling all day long. We're addicted to our screens. We're addicted to fast food, processed food, sex, porn, whatever distraction that we can possibly get to not sit with ourselves or to acknowledge the void that we experience. And so with working with these plant allies, I really truly believe we're at this point in life, this renaissance, because we need it. We need that like slap in the face, like, hey, come back to nature, come back to earth. We are not separate. We need to bring everything back into balance. And yeah, I've just experienced that time and time again. They're not healers, they're teachers. And you go in with a question, anyone who's experienced plant medicine, you go in with a question or intention, like you will most likely receive that answer either directly or indirectly. And yeah, not to be too redundant, but they do restore our relationship with nature. Earth becomes living. And I know that my first journey I did outside and I saw the trees moving and I saw everything coming to life and it dissolved the separation that I was experiencing. It gave me that awe, that gratitude, that universal oneness. And I can honestly and wholeheartedly say that was the first time that I felt connected to God. And that was after going to a Catholic school my entire, up until 12th grade, going to a Catholic university and being like in religion. I'd never experienced God, or I thought it was outside of myself. And so I was carrying a lot of shame and guilt. And that was like the first time that I finally felt like I was here, like I finally have arrived. And yeah, again, the more that I work with the medicine, the more that it's like a mystery school in itself. It's like you get the ancient wisdom, you start to connect dots, you start to see patterns, you start to like really be able to learn from nature itself, from the cycles of life, from the land, from the rhythm, from you name it, like all the like the plants itself, they all have a spiritual essence and story that they can tell you. It goes deep. And I won't go down that rabbit hole tonight, but yeah, it really excites me. And there's also just something that's like it activates your DNA. There's something inside of me. I've been sitting in plant medicine ceremonies, and all of a sudden, it's just like that part of me came online. Or I was able to tap into my ancestry or my lineage and like really start to embody different archetypes or different aspects of myself. And I think that's really important in today's age, again, in our Western world. I'll talk for myself personally, and if it resonates, it resonates. But I really like I'm white, right? I don't know. I guess my DNA, I'm from Britain and Wales and Ireland, but like there's no lineage there. And so I think it's really, really, really important that we can find and trace back where we come from, to feel connected and to honor our ancestors. But we just don't really have that as Americans. We just kind of were put here, and depending on what your background is, a lot of people had to change their last name or change their identity out of shame and guilt, and that goes deep too. But it does connect us back to our ancestry, which I think is extremely important. Yeah. And we've kind of touched on the science aspect of this, slowing perception and anchoring us in the now. Time softens, sensations deepen, and presence return. And that's, probably from the scientific view because of the amygdala being modulated and bringing us more into the body. But there is something too about like when you're deep in the medicine and just time feels like it's fake. There's no such thing. And it really gives you a new perspective of like how you spend your time, and um, just like what time, like the construct of time, right? Again, that's another rabbit hole. But just feeling present and not feeling like you're super in the past or super in the present. You're here, you're now, and that's the only moment that we have. And what I hear time and time again, and I love this one, is that it dissolves the false identities. The masks fall away. And I've had people do my Evolve program, and like week one, they're like, the masks are off. I can't lie to people anymore. Like I can't fake who I am and how I feel. Like it's very clear that this relationship isn't serving me. Like capital T truth just starts to come in. And I love that because we do live in a world where we're constantly masking or feeling like we have to like be in a mold. And the way that we heal the world and the collective is by just stepping into our authenticity. And I think that maybe the last 2 points here opens the heart and strengthens intuition are one and the same, because our heart is our intuitive self. And I feel, and me personally, I always had closed myself off because it was hard to feel. It's hard to take on the sadness of the world. It's hard to be misunderstood by others if you don't feel like they're relating to you, right? There's a million reasons why we close our heart, but a lot of us are living with a closed heart. We're living from the mind, the intellectual self. This is the only self that we think we have. But really, our heart is our true self. And so it starts to open that up, and it starts to show us like what it feels like to live from a heart-centered place, what it feels like to live in alignment and make decisions from that place. And to start to like hear the little whispers of like, that doesn't feel right. Oh, that like, like, how many times have you felt like, oh, that doesn't feel good? And you maybe override it, or you just get like a little download, a little whisper. And sometimes we don't trust that. If we're not used to it, we don't trust it. But the more that you start to listen to it and strengthen that intuition like any other muscle, the more that it's just like that's how you live. Straight I live straight straight off intuition these days, and I absolutely love it. It means there's a little bit less structure to my day, I think, because I wake up and I'm just like, "Phew, I'm just gonna go with it." But it feels good not to overthink and overanalyze and just like go with your heart. Follow your heart. So reciprocity, reverence, and ritual. This is where this is a point that I feel like is very, 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 yeah, so many people are disconnected from their heart. Thank you for that. Truly, like we all are. It's sad, but that's why we do what we do so that we can start to bring that awareness into life. So thank you, Elise, for that, for doing what you do to bring people back to their hearts. Um, The medicine is relational. I feel like this is a message for everything in life. We are not here just to consume, 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 consume. It's relational. It's about reciprocity. It's something that we give back to the mushrooms, and like it's a relationship. And I always like to kind of think about like if you don't have a respect for the medicine's not going to respect you. Like you're not going to get what you're searching for. you if you deeply respect the medicine, if you really are tapped into the subtleties, you're gonna be able to work with the medicine on such a deep level and to really like work with it in ways that you have so much clarity and yeah, it's just a beautiful thing to relate to the medicine and really understand it. And I think incorporating ritual and, using it ceremonially, using it in its traditional form, however that looks, enhances the science that we went over, right? Like like at the core of it, it's calming the nervous system, opening the heart, opening the sensory gaining channels. But when we do it in a traditional manner, it's like really, it's like honoring the medicine in their natural form, going back to the ancient ways. And when we do, like I said, when we are in right relationship, the medicine's going to bring us back to our body, which might be uncomfortable. It might be the first time that you feel your body. You might hate it, but that's also one of the major problems in our life, in our world, is that we are again living from the neck up. So it really is such a descent back into the body, back into our earth. This is our earth, and then back into the web of life. And so it's really not, for me, it's not about this like mind expansion, explore the cosmos, let's transcend reality, let's ascend. It's a descent, it's a remembrance. It's let's tap back into like where we came from and who we are. Like we are earthlings. We are here to be one of nature. And we'll get into in the last line intention directs it. Integration is how it becomes embodied and lived. That's a very important aspect of all this. Any questions? So, keys to success. If you've worked with medicine before, I'm sure you've heard this a million times. Intention. Our compass or our GPS, it's the vision of how we want to feel, who we want to be, what do we want to create, what do we want to let go of. And it really is, think about I decide to have a mushroom ceremony and I just take the mushrooms and I let them take me wherever I go. That's sometimes when you hear about people having a bad experience. It's like they're not grounded, they're not in their why. The medicine just takes them wherever. If I'm in my why and I'm grounded and I know why I'm doing it and have that deep reverence, then the medicine is gonna that those downloads are gonna come through. Those questions that I have, they're gonna be answered. And so, yeah, just I always am such a big advocate of having an intention, but also staying open without expectations. So these are just some, reflection questions. What's your why? How do you want to feel in your body? What area of your life do you want to improve? And I love this little image, right? It's first an intention, then it turns into a behavior, then a habit, then a practice, then it's second nature, and then it becomes who you are. Devotion. Devotion is my word of 2026. Devoted to those little practices. Integration, arguably just as important, if not more important, in my opinion, maybe, because we can have these peak experiences. We can have this like big, profound experience, but then we go back to work on Monday. And sometimes it's just a fleeting moment. And so, how are we really going to bridge those aha moments, those downloads, those insights that we get into everyday life? So using myself as an example, um, first thing is the awareness, right? Like I used to use when I was really struggling with my body and food, I was working with the medicine to help me unlock that shame and kind of like what was happening. And so I did start to become more aware of like, okay, I'm at the fridge and what am I doing here? Like, I'm not hungry. I just ate. Okay, I'm either dysregulated, my emotions are like, I'm feeling something that I don't know what I'm feeling, but like, let me tap in, let me see how I feel. Okay, all right, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling sad. What can I do? Let me go call somebody instead. Let me go shake, let me go ground, let me go do anything else but like eat, right? That well-worn pattern that I'd had for like a decade. And so eventually, you start to do other things instead of that repatterning, that taking the new path. Um, and over time, that just becomes again that new way of being. You're not operating in that same old pattern that has a grip over you. And I think a big part of integration too is finding a community that supports you, sees you, holds you, right? We're not biologically wired to do things alone, especially when we're doing tough inner work. It can be extremely isolating. And anyone who's in this line of work, I'm sure agrees that it feels really isolating because you have to let go of a lot of relationships, family to just be on the path and to stay grounded in your truth. So finding like-minded individuals is huge. Connection. Yeah. So this kind of goes into what a lot of what I've been speaking, connecting with the medicine, approaching it with reverence. Thank you, Elise. I'm glad I found you as well. You're the best. I've got a big smile on my face now. Approach with reverence. They're conscious healers. They're not just substances. Tune into the energy and their guidance. Connection with self. Again, know your why. Don't just don't just use them. And just every time I use it's funny, I use the word use. Every time I work with medicine, I do try to call in my higher self and connect with that person. Connecting with community again, finding safe spaces that you can be seen, heard, and feeling less alone. People who understand how hard this work is, people who can reflect back your brilliance and your genius. Connecting with the earth. This is like number one for me. I'm very heady, very ethereal. So allowing myself to slow down, allowing myself to go out and operate at nature's pace. Because if we're constantly in go, 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 go mode, the frequency of the mind, which is fast, we're not in a receptive state to receive the creative downloads or the insights or the next moves or whatever you want to call it, right? We're not able to be open and receive, which is how we get the answers of where we're going. And so nature has been my best teacher with this, slowing down, right? Like a tree, like how long does it take for a tree to grow? How long does it take for a flower to bloom? Does a flower bloom every season? No. Does a tree like get mad at itself when it loses its leaves? No. Everything is cyclical, everything ebbs and flows, just sticking with the process and not, you know, not labeling everything. And then, yes, connecting with a higher power. I really wholeheartedly believe there is a bigger force that is orchestrating everything in life, all of us. I feel like we're all just a reflection of the same higher power. So whether that is nature, Mother Earth, or divine source, or whatever you want to call it, the universe, I would encourage you to connect with that power. And the mushrooms have been such an integral part of that for me. Finally connecting with spirit and feeling inspirited, inspired, and having it flow through me without, again, me blocking myself, my ego getting in the way, the judgments, the like, what are people going to think? It's like, no, I say God, but that's like God's will. Like I'm just doing what I am supposed to do, serving this higher power. And the medicine will help you with that. One of the few other things that I just wanted to touch on too, this is all very vulnerable. Like I said, it's not easy. This is very hard work. And so it can be difficult, especially if you are working through tough emotions, especially if you're experiencing emotions for the first time, like I had to do. If you're, bringing up stuff from the past, again, if you're bringing up stuff from childhood before we had language, right? That stuff can be really hard to process. So just finding a guide or a container to, at the very least, just like hear you out, provide that accountability, provide the guidance and the support because we often have these blind spots where we can't really see ourselves. So it always helps to have somebody just seeing us in our full wholeness, our messiness, and our vulnerability, and reflecting back like, hey, you're okay. You're actually like freaking crushing it. You're brilliant. You're genius. And I see this in you. Like having people in my life, coaches, guides, communities, have elevated me so much because I was not seeing myself in that way until I heard it, not once, but a few times, and it's like, oh, okay. I guess I do have a grounding presence. I guess I am calm. I guess I do give good advice, right? We need other people to give us that. And I have your foster self-trust. A lot of us are just operating out of feeling isolated and like we can't trust people. And so to be able to heal that wound means everything to feel like you have people in your corner. Okay. So, yeah, if you are feeling the call to go deeper, I work with medicine in a few of ways. The first is the Evolve Medicine program, one of my favorites. I'm like getting really excited about it, but it is an 8-week journey. We kind of I think I went over a lot in this 1 hour, but it's a very much deeper dive into plant medicine, holistic psychology, earth-based wisdom, and having a container of others who see you, like I said. So it starts very bottom up, nervous system, physical body, our earth, how we can come back into balance and homeostasis, getting into the emotional body, processing, releasing old out identities, releasing things that don't serve us, and then moving up more into the higher brain or whatever, the top down, and really starting to rewire through the use of microdosing, through the use of getting habit stacking and rituals and subconscious reprogramming, right? Starting to really again weed out those old trails and start to make new ones. And there's just a lot of good stuff in it. It's a lot. But I always just say whatever resonates, take whatever resonates, leave the rest. But it's got a lot of the stuff that's helped me in my process. But really the goal is to give you the tools and the community to help you find your next step or to really see yourself in your wholeness so that you know what your medicine is and you feel like you're ready to share those soul gifts with the world. And the second offering is the Inner Alchemy Medicine Ceremony. So that is a private or group ceremony where we're working with medicine in a larger way. And that is more of like you're looking for deep, deep transformation, or you're looking to, again, get a little bit more under the surface in a bigger way and be held and guided in that too. Right? We go into the intention setting, the why, the space, the journey itself, and then integration and how can we actually embody the changes of the downloads that we've received. So, yeah, those are my two offerings right now. If that resonates or you feel called, just reach out and I would love to hop on a call with you. And I always have to back it up with some sort of testimonial because I don't want to just blow smoke out my butt. Oh, Elise is in. Nice. Thank you. I love that. So excited to have you. Yeah, because obviously I just want you to see that I am working with people. They are seeing real life changes. And yeah, it's not even me. It's the medicine and it's them. And I'm simply here just to create the container for it. I always like to include some additional resources. Like I said, Fantastic Fungi was like the number one thing that like was like, oh my God, these are amazing. Mushrooms are life. How to Change Your Mind is on Netflix. That's a really good one if you've got Netflix. And um, How the Body Keeps a Score is a great, great book. And you can listen to podcasts, you can listen to a bunch of stuff about it. But that's been really helpful in, getting past this intellectual self and really starting to release a lot of the stuff that my body was holding on to. Any questions? If not, then we can call it an evening. And again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. My Wi-Fi literally went out like 10 minutes in, so we had to restart. Okay, cool. So I don't think we have any questions. If you're watching this on replay, I appreciate you. If you are watching this live, thank you so much for being here. And you can find me at Alchemize with Allie, ALLI.com. If you would like to book a call or if you have any questions, it's the same on Instagram. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I will talk to you soon, hopefully.